Hey guys, Lee here. Just wanted to do a quick video to talk about something that I think needs some clarification. This is not a video about the total lunar eclipse in Leo. I'm going to do a separate video about that, to talk about the chart and the very, very interesting symmetry between this full moon lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse of August 2017. Really interesting narrative arc between these two charts. But first, I'm going to talk about three things in this video, because they are getting so much airtime right now on the internet, and it never fails in the run-up to certain lunation cycles, certain eclipse events, certain newer full moons. Because of different elements that are coinciding, people go kind of bananas. And the three things I want to talk about in this video are supermoons, blood moons, and blue moons, and why some of these things are not such big things after all. I'll give you the information. You can decide how you feel about it, but I can tell you for one that when it comes to me and how I'm looking at a newer full moon cycle, an eclipse event, whatever have you, I'm interested in the chart, I'm interested in the astrology. A lot of these things that we tack on top are not, they don't add any depth, but they do serve sometimes to hype up the thing or to make it very like, ooh, doom and gloom. There's, it's a lunar eclipse, but it's a supermoon, but it's a... And I am just not about that. I'm not about that life. So let's tackle them one by one. First up is supermoons. Supermoons are not an astronomical term. It was a term created by an astrologer. And yes, I am a practicing astrologer. I love my craft. But I leave the astronomy to the astronomers, where it should be, arguably. So at some point, a guy named Richard Knoll created the term supermoon and the complementary bit, which is the micromoon. I'm also dubious of any kind of system where the supermoon gets tons of hype. It's on the internet, it's a hashtag, it's whatever, and you don't really see the same thing happening with micromoon. First. Secondly, good to know that the size difference kind of visually between an average full moon and a super full moon is only about 7%. And if I gave you a 7% discount or a 7% raise, you would not be so impressed. It's arguable that to the naked eye, a lot of people will not be able to see the size difference. What does change somewhat considerably is the brightness. The brightness can go up about 10–15% depending, on various factors, but it's only about 7%. So that is the first one. That's pretty easy. For those of you that don't know, though, and these are the kinds of things you would learn in my lunar cycles course if you're interested in it, shameless plug alert. The moon orbits the Earth not in a circle, which has one central focus point, but an ellipse. And an ellipse always has two foci, not one. So in this elliptical orbit, the Earth is one focus point, and then there's one that's empty over here. And so it just serves, that sometimes the moon is closer to our side of Earth and to our vision, field of vision, and sometimes it's further away, sometimes it's on that side. And that's known as perigee, which is closer, apogee, which is further away. Those are the technical terms. But supermoon and micromoon, are they a thing? I think they could be not a thing. Number 2, blood moons. Blood moon is not terribly rare. We will actually have 2 in 2018. We'll have 1 in 2019. And it occurs most commonly when there's a total, absolute eclipse of the moon. Because there's 2 types of shade that hit the Earth's surface. There's penumbra, which are these 2 flanking bits of shadow that aren't as dark or as deep. And then there's the central shadow, which is called the umbra. So umbra and penumbra. When we get partial eclipses, the moon still appears really milky white, and the penumbra creeps up as like a black shadow that bites a piece out of the moon. So there's still this like milky clean white surface of the moon, and then there's this black chunk that gets bitten out. That's because the penumbra is kind of shifted up, and then it'll shift away. In a total lunar eclipse, I don't have 3 hands, so I'm going to try my best to illustrate this. The moon is there, still white. The penumbra creeps up creating the black and the darkness. And as soon as that moves away and the moon gets into the part of the shadow that's called the umbra, the total eclipsing happens in the umbra, then there's a scattering of light that appears red. It can be red, it can be dark orange, it can be brownish, it can vary a little bit. But that's what a blood moon is, essentially. And it's actually the same phenomenon that we see the sky as blue during the daytime. Well, I live in London right now, so it's very rarely blue, but still. And at sunset, we have these gorgeous, stunning red, fiery, orangey sunsets. It's the same phenomenon. The scattering of light that either pushes certain wavelengths of light towards us, like blue during the daytime, or doesn't at sunset, for example. So we see orange and red. Same kind of thing is happening. So blood moons, it's pretty, frequent that if you have a total lunar eclipse, the moon is being totally eclipsed in the umbra shadow. It's going to be a blood moon, have this red or reddish appearance. Also good to know, blood moon is a term that's been picked up and fanaticized by crazy religious right people. And I even shouldn't call them the religious right. They're kind of religious off the deep end types that believe there's going to be an end of times reckoning, a revelation, that the revelation is coming. And they essentially believe that the blood moon and the appearance of blood moons, excuse me, is just God showing people that the end of times are coming. So you may or may not wish to align yourselves with those people philosophically. So the blood moon, it's a thing, it's not a thing. It's a natural occurrence of a total lunar eclipse, but it's a clever, cute term that makes a great hashtag. Next, blue moons. Topic number 3. Blue moons are harder to describe. However, stay with me. The term blue moon was originally just meant not possible, because the moon is almost always a milky, sometimes yellowy, milky white yellow appearance. It almost is never blue. It's impossible for the moon to be blue. I digress only to say that yes, sometimes the moon can appear blue, but that's in only like really rare events like volcanic ash scattering in such a way that there's an appearance of being blue. So blue moon used to mean impossible, because the moon can never be blue. Then it kind of changed and morphed to mean rarely or once every now and again or infrequent. And then in Maine, so the northeastern state in the United States called Maine, the Maine Farmer's Almanac decided that if there were 4 full moons in a season that should only hold 3, that the third of the 4 would be the blue moon. So, giving you an example, and this is interesting. We are currently in the season, because it's a solar season, so solstice to equinox, equinox to solstice, and so on. The winter solstice was December 21st. The spring equinox will be March 20th this year. So that's a season, that's a 3-month period that should normally hold 3 full moons. And in fact, it does only hold 3 full moons. I've got the dates here. So we had a full moon on January 1st. We're going to have the full moon in total lunar eclipse tomorrow, January 31st. And there will be a full moon on March 1st. There's only 3 full moons there. The actual blue moon, by that technical standard, would occur in the period September 24th to December 22nd. And it would be the November 23rd full moon happening at around 0 degrees 50 minutes of Gemini of 2018. So that's what it was about. The idea was that there were 4 different solar seasons based on the solstices and equinoxes. 4 seasons times 3 months each. Those 3 months should have 3 full moons. And if they have 4 full moons instead of 3, the third is the blue moon. And that's something that the Maine Farmer's Almanac pretty much made up. And then, in the mid-1940s, there was a journalist that just kind of misquoted it and said that it was to have 2 full moons in a calendar month was a blue moon. So totally different ball game here. That's not about solar seasons and the number of moons that should be in a season. It's just a calendar month, which is a man-made thing. Again, the solar seasons, they're punctuated by the sun's seasons of rising and falling in the sky from our perception. The calendars are just man-made things that we've made up to not feel crazy about the passage of time and have an organized human civilized system. So very different system to say that a blue moon is the second full moon in a calendar month. Going by that measure, yes, January 31st, we have a second full moon in the month of January, and then we would have a further blue moon March 31st, because there will be 2 full moons in March of 2018. However, again, kind of just throwing a spanner in the works here, this is time zone dependent, because a full moon is the moment of absolute perfect exactitude when the sun and moon oppose one another. That may or may not happen on the same day for everyone worldwide, and therefore it may mean that you have a blue moon. I say blue moon in quotation marks because again, this is a definition that's been shifting throughout time. You have a blue moon event or not. And just using an example, in Australia and New Zealand are a totally different time zone than, central USA. So it could be feasible that central North America has a blue moon and calls it thus, but because of the shifting of the calendars and the dates and the time zones, Australia and New Zealand do not. So that's all I wanted to tell you guys. If you're reading lots about why this is the craziest lunar eclipse ever because it's a blood moon and a supermoon and a blue moon, just, think about it. And hope this video was helpful. Hopefully it clarified a few things that I know can be really confusing because these terms get bandied about quite a lot, and there's not a lot of clarity about what they mean. They usually just serve, again, to kind of like hype things up or act as a handy little hashtag to tack onto something without actually adding depth. So that's it. Have fun with that information. Be ready to call everybody out when they say it's the blood moon or the super moon or whatever. Hope you've got enough gunpowder in the reserve now to do that properly. And I will see you guys very soon with the lunar eclipse reading. Thanks so much.